People with blind friends. What's the craziest thing you've done behind their backs? We were in the canteen when the class clown was about to throw chewed-up food at my blind friend. He stabbed the soggy beef with his fork, cocked his arm back, but Tom somehow ducked before the food even left his fork. I looked around, and seemingly I was the only one who noticed. "Yo, what was that sound?" Tom asked, trying to sound confused. "Steven just dropped his tray," I lied, now watching Tom like a hawk. And when no one was looking, he subtly turned to the floor to see where the food had landed. Goosebumps went up my spine. You see, there was this rumor about Tom faking his blindness to grope younger kids in the hallways. I'd always thought it was BS, cruel gossip about the new disabled kid, but since he'd just transferred from another state, no one knew for sure. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop testing him. During English, I dropped my pencil near his feet. He stepped over it perfectly, his cane somehow missing it entirely. "Tom, there's a pencil by your foot," Serafina said from across the aisle. "Oh, thanks," he replied, making a show of sweeping his cane around before finding it. Got it. I'd seen him avoid it perfectly 10 seconds earlier. That's when the rumors I'd been ignoring started making sense. Tom always positioned himself near the 5th grade wing during the passing period. His hands would brush against the smaller kids, fingertips trailing across shoulders, palms grazing backs. They'd create these little paths around him, pressing against lockers to avoid his reach. Yesterday, this tiny 5th grade girl actually flinched when she saw him coming. That night I went down a rabbit hole trying to find out anything about Tom's past. I went harder than Joe Goldberg. I Googled his full name, stalked his social media, and got nothing. That's when I decided to type in his dad's name. The news headline I found made my mouth go dry. "Local man primary suspect in brutal killing." The article was from 5 years ago, but it was the last line that made my hands shake. Police seek testimony from suspect's 9-year-old son, the only witness to the alleged murder. Suspicions surround whether the incident really blinded him. The next day, I followed Tom after school. He walked down the empty 5th grade hallway, his guide dog padding beside him. A kid was crying by the water fountain, backpack spilled everywhere. Tom stopped exactly 3 feet away. No cane sweep to find them, no hands reaching out, just his head turned directly at the kid's face. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. The kid sniffled, and Tom gave him a lollipop. After the kid ran off, I stepped out from around the corner. "You can see. You aren't blind." Tom spun toward me. No fumbling, no searching for my voice. "Alex, please. How long have you been faking it? You don't understand what will happen if anyone finds out. Try me, because right now I'm thinking those rumors might be true." "What?" His voice cracked. "You think I'm—" "No, never. I keep my distance from everyone always." "Then what's with the blind act? What are you hiding?" Tom looked around the empty hallway, checking every corner like someone might be watching. His shoulders tensed, and I could see him weighing whether to trust me. His hand moved to his dark glasses, then stopped, fingers trembling against the frames. "If I tell you this," his voice was barely a whisper, "you can't tell anyone. Not your best friend, not your parents, no one. Tom, promise me." His perfectly functional eyes stared into mine through the dark lenses. "Promise, or I walk away right now, and we never had this conversation." "I promise." He took a shaky breath, then pulled off his dark glasses. His brown eyes met mine directly. "It happened when I was 11. 3 men broke into our house. My dad wanted to let them take everything to keep us safe, but then they got their hands on my mom, and—" his hands were shaking now. "One pulled a knife on her. Said she was too beautiful to resist. Dad lost it while she was blindfolded. But I saw everything. The man's face, his jacket, the tattoo on his neck. Everything. Your dad killed him," I said, the article making sense now. "To save us. It was self-defense, but no one cared. They came back to our house a week later." Tom's voice went hollow. "They said if I testified, if I told anyone what I saw, they'd kill my little sister in front of me, make me watch with my working eyes. Oh my. So my parents made me disappear. We moved, changed our names, and I became blind. You can't testify about what you can't see. For 5 years?" He smiled weakly, like he was realizing how long it had been. "Every single day. The second someone catches on, we move again." "But the rumors?" Tom's face went pale. "You really want to know about the rumors?" I nodded. What he said next made me throw up into my book bag. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and stayed bent over my backpack, trying to catch my breath. Tom stood a few feet away, watching me, his face pale and scared. My hands wouldn't stop shaking because what he'd just told me kept playing in my head over and over. At his last school, a kid went missing. Not just any kid. A 10-year-old boy who'd been spreading rumors about Tom being fake blind. The boy disappeared from the playground during recess, and nobody ever found his body. But 3 days after he vanished, his backpack showed up on Tom's family's doorstep with a note inside that said, "Keep your mouth shut, or your sister is next." Tom pulled out his phone with fingers that trembled so bad, he almost dropped it. He opened a news article and held it out to me. I straightened up enough to read the screen, my stomach still churning. The headline said, "Local boy missing after school playground incident," and there was a photo of a smiling kid with red hair and freckles. The article talked about how he disappeared during afternoon recess, how teachers didn't notice he was gone for almost 20 minutes, how police searched for weeks with no leads. Then I saw the part that made my blood go cold. The article mentioned that days before vanishing, the boy had been telling classmates about the weird blind kid who's faking it. Tom's voice cracked when he started talking. He told me the boy's name was Danny, and Danny had been watching Tom the same way I had been, testing him, catching him seeing things. Danny told his friends, told his teacher, told anyone who would listen. Then one Tuesday, he didn't come home from the school. Tom's family got the backpack on Friday with that note and photos of Tom's little sister at her elementary school, photos taken from across the street, showing exactly where she played at recess. I felt sick again, but forced myself to keep listening. Tom said his family moved 2 weeks later, changed their names, started over in a new state. They thought they'd gotten away, thought the criminals had lost track of them. But 2 weeks after they moved here, Tom opened his locker and found a photo taped inside. He pulled up another image on his phone and showed me. It was a picture of a small brick building with a playground, and written on the back in red marker were the words, "We found you again." That was Tom's little sister's new elementary school. Someone had found them, tracked them down, and wanted Tom to know they were still watching. I asked Tom if he was sure it was the same people, and he nodded while scanning the hallway like someone might be listening. He explained that he'd been trying to figure out which adult at our school was connected to the criminals. For the past month, he'd been watching people during pickup and drop-off times, studying faces, looking for anything familiar. That's when he noticed the man in the gray jacket. Tom said the guy shows up at least twice a week, always lingering near the 5th grade entrance, always pretending to be on his phone, but never actually picking up a student or going into the building. The man has a tattoo on his neck, some kind of snake design, and it matches one of the home invaders Tom saw that night 5 years ago. My stomach dropped when Tom told me the man was here today. During lunch period, while we were sitting in the cafeteria eating, the gray jacket man walked past the windows outside. Tom saw him stop and stare directly at our table for almost 5 minutes, just standing there watching. Tom had to sit there pretending he couldn't see anything, pretending he didn't notice the man who'd helped threaten his family standing 20 feet away. That's why Tom seemed so tense during lunch, why he barely touched his food, why he kept fidgeting with his dark glasses. He was scared out of his mind, but couldn't show it. Then Tom explained something that made me feel like garbage for ever believing those rumors about him. He said he hands out candy and lollipops to younger kids as a way to create chances to redirect them away from dangerous areas. Last week, he spotted the gray jacket man positioning himself near the side exit where 3 5th graders usually catch their bus. Tom stopped the kids and told them about a cool spider web on the other side of the building, got them excited about seeing it, walked them all the way around to a different exit where there were more teachers and parents. The kids thought Tom was just being nice. They had no idea he was steering them away from a predator. I asked Tom why he didn't just tell his parents or the police about what he'd been seeing, and his face went even paler than before. He said his family was trapped in an impossible situation. If he breaks his cover and reports what he's seeing, the criminals will know he can identify them, and they'll follow through on their threat against his sister. But if he does nothing, and something happens to another kid, he'll never forgive himself for staying silent. Either way, someone could get hurt or killed. Tom showed me one more photo on his phone, and I felt my chest get tight. It was his little sister Donna at her elementary school, taken from across the street just 3 days ago. She was playing on the swings, smiling, completely unaware someone was watching her and taking pictures. Someone had texted it to Tom's mom's phone with a message that said, "She's so small and trusting." Tom told me his mom had a panic attack so bad she couldn't breathe, and his dad wanted to pack up and move that same night. But Tom begged them to wait, because running away hadn't stopped these people from finding them before. Every time they moved, the criminals tracked them down within weeks. Tom thought maybe staying and trying to stop them here was actually safer than running and waiting for them to show up again in some new city. I stood there in that empty hallway trying to process everything Tom had just told me, and suddenly, I understood. Tom had been living with this terror every single day for 5 years, while everyone at the school treated him like some kind of predator. The rumors about him groping kids, the whispers, the way people avoided him, it was all probably being spread by the same criminals who were threatening his family. It was perfect. If Tom ever tried to speak up or ask for help, nobody would believe him because everyone already thought he was a creep. People would just assume he was trying to deflect from his own bad behavior. The criminals had isolated him completely, made sure he had no allies. No one he could trust. Tom's voice got quiet and shaky when he told me about his previous school. He said he tried warning a teacher about a suspicious man who kept hanging around the playground during recess. The teacher looked at Tom like he was being paranoid and said he was imagining things because of his disability, that he couldn't possibly know what he was talking about, since he couldn't see. Tom tried to explain, but the teacher dismissed him and told him not to spread rumors. 2 weeks later, that's when Danny disappeared. Tom said he's blamed himself every single day since then for not finding a better way to make the adults listen, for not doing more to protect that kid. He's terrified the same thing is going to happen here, and it'll be his fault again for not stopping it. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and looked at Tom, trying to process everything he'd just told me. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked, my voice still shaky. Tom looked at me with eyes that were desperate and tired at the same time. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I just couldn't keep carrying this alone anymore. You've been watching me, testing me, and I knew you were going to figure it out eventually. I needed someone to know the truth in case something happens to me or my family. Someone who could tell the real story if we disappear, like we almost did before." He leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the floor. "The worst part isn't even the danger," he continued. "It's the loneliness. I have to pretend to be someone I'm not every single moment of every single day. I can't make real friends because getting close to people means risking them finding out my secret. I can't play basketball even though I love it. I can't take art class even though drawing is my favorite thing. I just have to sit there acting like I can't see while everyone else gets to be normal." His voice cracked a little. "I'm trapped in this fake life while those criminals watch my every move, and I can't even be myself for 1 second. I sat down next to him on the floor. "I'll help you figure this out," I said. "But we need to be smart about every step. We can't just go to the police because your word alone isn't enough after 5 years, right? And if you tell them about the gray jacket man, they'll know you can see. We need to find a way to protect those 5th graders and get proof without blowing your cover or putting your sister in danger." Tom nodded, and then his face went even more serious. "There's one more thing you need to know. That man with the tattoo isn't working alone here. I've seen him talking to someone in the main office twice now. Always quick conversations that look casual, but they happen too often to be random. I don't know who it is yet, because I have to be careful about where I look and for how long. But someone with access to student information is definitely helping them." My stomach dropped. Someone who worked at our school was part of this. "Okay," I said, thinking fast. "Here's what we do. Tomorrow during pickup time, I'll position myself where I can watch for the gray jacket man. You text me if you see him arrive. Something simple like, 'Forgot my math book,' so it looks normal. I'll take photos if I can, and we'll start keeping track of patterns. We need to document everything before we figure out who we can safely trust." Tom grabbed my arm as we stood up to leave. "Promise me one more time, you can't tell anyone. Not your best friend, not your parents, nobody. My parents made me swear the same thing 5 years ago. If you break that promise, my little sister dies." The weight of what he was asking hit me hard. This wasn't just keeping a secret. This was holding someone's life in my hands. "I promise," I said, and I meant it. We left the hallway separately. Tom headed toward his bus stop while I walked in the opposite direction toward home. Both of us were trying to look casual, even though I was pretty sure we were both checking every car and person we passed. For the first time, I understood why Tom always looked so tired and stressed. He'd been living in fear like this for 5 years. I'd only known the truth for 30 minutes, and I already felt like jumping out of my skin. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that 10-year-old boy from Tom's old school and wondering if the same thing could happen here. I pulled up the news article Tom had shown me earlier and read every single detail. The boy's name was Danny Martinez. He disappeared from the playground during recess on a Tuesday afternoon. Teachers said he was there 1 minute and gone the next. The article mentioned that Danny had been spreading rumors about the weird blind kid just days before he vanished. The case went cold after 3 months. No suspects, no leads, nothing. The comments section was full of people blaming Danny's parents for not watching him close enough. Nobody seemed to connect it to Tom at all. I spent the next 2 hours going down a research rabbit hole about the home invasion at Tom's house 5 years ago. I found the original articles about his dad being investigated for killing that man. The news reports made Tom's dad sound dangerous. They suggested maybe the killing wasn't really self-defense. Maybe he just lost his temper and went too far. There was barely any mention of Tom being there. Just one line that said, the suspect's young son was present during the incident. Nothing about what Tom actually saw or why it mattered. Around midnight, I found a follow-up article from 6 months after everything happened. It said the case against Tom's dad was dropped because of not enough evidence and questions about whether witnesses could be trusted. I read that line 3 times before it clicked. The prosecutors couldn't use Tom's story because he'd gone blind. Without Tom explaining what really happened and what he saw, they couldn't prove if the killing was okay or not. The criminals must have known that threatening Tom would destroy the whole case against his dad. It was perfect for them. They made sure Tom couldn't testify by making him pretend to be blind, and that meant nobody could prove what really happened that night. Tom's dad looked guilty. The real criminals got away with everything, and Tom's family had to run and hide. I finally fell asleep around 2 in the morning with my phone still in my hand, the article still open on the screen. The next morning at the school, I could barely keep my eyes open. Every person walking past made my heart jump. Some guy in a jacket walked by the front entrance, and I froze until I saw him hand a lunch bag to a kid who'd forgotten it at home. Just someone's dad, not a threat. I caught Tom's eye between second and third period in the hallway. He gave me this tiny nod, and I suddenly understood that this feeling, this constant fear of everyone around you, this is what his whole life had been like for 5 straight years. During third period, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Forgot my math book," it said, and my stomach dropped. That was the code. I raised my hand and asked Mr. Chen if I could use the bathroom. He waved me off without looking up from his desk. I walked fast down the hallway to the bathroom near the window that looked out over the front parking lot and the 5th grade entrance. I positioned myself at the window and looked down at the bike racks. There he was, gray jacket, dark hair, standing by the bike racks with his phone out like he was texting someone, but his head kept turning toward the building entrance. He was watching. I couldn't see his neck from this angle to check for the tattoo Tom had mentioned, but the way he stood there, the way he kept looking around, everything about him felt wrong. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos through the window. I tried to be smooth about it, holding the phone at different angles to get clear shots of his face. He looked maybe 40 or 45, average height, wearing sunglasses even though the sky was gray and cloudy. I zoomed in as much as I could without making the image blurry. Got his face from the side, from the front when he turned, got his build, his jacket, his shoes. He stayed there for about 8 minutes, just standing and watching. Then he walked away down the street toward the main road. He didn't get into any of the parked cars, just walked away on foot. I sent all the photos to Tom with a message that just said, "Got them." At lunch, I sat at our usual table. Tom was already there with his guide dog lying under the table. We didn't look at each other any more than normal. We both knew someone might be watching us now. Serafina sat down across from me and stared at my face. "Are you okay? You look really tired." I forced a smile and shrugged. "Yeah, I just stayed up too late gaming last night. Lost track of time." She seemed to buy it and started talking about the history test next week. Tom sat there eating his sandwich slowly, his head pointed down at his tray like he couldn't see anything. But I noticed now how his head turned slightly every time someone walked past our table. He was tracking every person in that cafeteria while pretending to be blind. After school, I followed Tom's usual route toward the 5th grade wing. I stayed far enough back that it would look like I just happened to be going the same direction. The gray jacket man wasn't there today, but I saw Tom walking with his cane, and a group of younger kids came around the corner heading toward a side exit. Tom moved slightly, positioning himself so the kids had to go around him. It looked natural, like he was just in the way, but it steered them away from that side exit. I glanced at the exit and saw a woman I didn't recognize standing there, looking at her phone. Something about the way Tom had moved made me think he'd identified her as another threat. That evening, I sat in my room and created a new document on my phone. I titled it History Notes, so if anyone saw it, they wouldn't wonder what it was. My first entry described everything I'd seen today. Gray jacket man, probably 40s, dark hair, sunglasses on cloudy day, gray jacket, average build, arrived during third period, stood by bike racks for 8 minutes, watched building entrance, left on foot heading toward Main Street, did not enter any vehicle in parking lot. I added the photos I'd taken and saved everything. Later that night, Tom texted me. The message was long. He said he'd seen the gray jacket man talking to Hutchinson, one of the office assistants, 2 different times. Both times were in the morning before school officially started. Both times the conversations ended with Hutchinson handing the man papers. Tom thought she might be the inside person giving the criminals information about students, addresses, schedules, all of it. I spent the next hour researching Hutchinson online, found her social media accounts, but most of them were set to private. Her Facebook showed she'd worked at our school for 3 years. She posted normal stuff about her garden and her cats, but I noticed something weird. No photos with family or friends, no tagged photos from other people. Her profile picture looked at least 5 years old, maybe older. Everything about her online presence felt like she was trying to keep it small on purpose. The next day, I volunteered to help in the main office during my free period. I'd never done it before, but I told the secretary I needed service hours for a club I was in. She seemed happy to have the help and put me to work filing attendance sheets. Hutchinson sat at her desk about 10 feet away from me. She was polite when I said hello, but didn't really look at me. Just nodded and went back to her computer. I watched her while I filed papers. She kept her computer screen angled away from the main desk area. Every single time she got up from her chair, even just to grab something from the printer 3 feet away, she locked her screen. Most people didn't bother with that. During my volunteer time, the door opened and the gray jacket man walked in. My hands started shaking, but I kept filing papers like I hadn't noticed him. He walked up to Hutchinson's desk and asked about pickup procedures for his nephew. His voice was normal, friendly even. Hutchinson pulled out a pamphlet from her drawer and handed it to him, but I saw her slip a small piece of paper inside the pamphlet before she passed it over. The man thanked her and left. Hutchinson went right back to her computer like nothing had happened. My hands were shaking, so hard I almost dropped the attendance sheets I was holding. I kept filing and tried to look normal even though my heart was beating. So fast I thought everyone in the office could hear it. That evening I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Tom. I described everything I saw in the office. The way Hutchinson slipped that paper into the pamphlet, how careful she was about it, how the gray jacket man thanked her and left like it was totally normal. Tom's response came back fast. He said we now had confirmation that Hutchinson was helping them, but we still didn't have real proof. Nothing that would make the police or school believe us. We needed to figure out what information she was passing along and why. He suggested we try to get a look at her computer or desk when she wasn't around. I stared at my phone screen and felt my stomach twist up. He was talking about breaking into the office, actually going through her stuff. I typed back asking if he was serious, and he said yes. What choice did we have? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at my ceiling and thinking about how we were just 2 high school kids trying to stop actual criminals. Real dangerous people who had already made at least 1 kid disappear from Tom's last school. The smart thing would be telling our parents or going to the police. But Tom was right, that doing that without solid proof would just expose his secret. Then his sister would be in immediate danger. The criminals would know Tom could see and identify them. They would follow through on their threat. We were stuck in this impossible situation where the only way to get help was to gather evidence ourselves first. But gathering evidence meant doing things that could get us in serious trouble. I rolled over and looked at my alarm clock. 3 in the morning. I had to be up for school in 4 hours. The next morning, I got to the school way earlier than normal. The parking lot was almost empty. I walked toward the main entrance, and that's when I saw it. The gray jacket man's car was parked across the street. A dark blue sedan with windows so dark you couldn't see inside. I stopped walking and pulled out my phone like I was checking a message. My hands were shaking, but I managed to open my camera app. I took 3 photos of the car from different angles, made sure I got the license plate clear in at least 1 shot. The plate number was JKR4829. I said it in my head over and over so I wouldn't forget. JKR4829. I added the photos to my history notes document and typed the plate number below them. Then I looked at the car again. The man was sitting in the driver's seat. I could see his shape through the windshield. He was watching the 5th grade entrance, just sitting there staring at where the little kids would walk in. I felt sick, knowing he was probably picking out which kids would be the easiest targets, which ones walked alone, which ones seemed scared or weak. Tom found me before first period and grabbed my arm. He pulled me into an empty classroom near the science labs. His face was so pale it looked gray. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled out his phone with hands that were shaking really bad. He turned the screen toward me. It was a photo of his little sister Donna. She was at a playground sitting on a swing. The photo was taken from far away like someone was hiding and watching her. Tom flipped the phone over, and I saw there was an actual printed photo. Someone had slipped it into his locker. On the back, someone had written in red pen, "She plays alone too much." The words were neat and careful. That made it worse somehow. Tom's hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped his phone. I grabbed it from him so he wouldn't. I looked at the photo again and felt my chest get tight. The criminals were escalating their threats. They weren't just watching anymore. They were making sure Tom knew they could get to Donna whenever they wanted. I asked Tom if his parents knew about the photo. He shook his head fast, said he couldn't tell them. His mom was already having panic attacks every day. His dad kept talking about moving again, packing everything up and running to another state, another new name, another new school. Tom's voice cracked when he said he was terrified that if they ran away one more time, the criminals would stop sending warnings. They would just act, take Donna and hurt her to punish the family for running. He thought staying here and trying to stop them was actually safer than moving again. At least here they knew where the danger was. They could see it coming. If they ran, the criminals would just find them again in some new city. And next time, there might not be any warnings at all. We stood there in the empty classroom for a minute, not saying anything. Then I told Tom we needed to take a bigger risk. We had to get into Hutchinson's desk after school when the office was closed. We needed to see what files she had, what information she was giving to the gray jacket man. Tom nodded and said he knew the side door to the administrative area didn't lock right. He'd heard teachers complaining about it. If we could get in and photograph whatever Hutchinson was keeping, we might have evidence we could take to the police. Real proof that wouldn't require Tom to explain how he saw things. We could say we were walking by and saw the door was open, went in to close it and saw suspicious files, something like that. We would figure out the story later. Right now, we just needed the evidence. The rest of the day went by so slow. Every class felt like it lasted forever. I tried to focus on what the teachers were saying, but I couldn't. All I could think about was breaking into the school office. What if we got caught? What if someone saw us? What if Hutchinson came back for something she forgot? Listen to 90 Seconds and rate me 5 stars on Spotify. Doing a giveaway for people who did this and show proof on my Instagram. There will be 4 winners, and you get to choose between a Spotify or Amazon gift card. Tom and I avoided each other in the hallways. We had to keep acting like we barely knew each other. During English class, I noticed Serafina staring at me. She had this worried look on her face. I realized I must look as stressed as I felt. I forced myself to smile at her and then pretended to pay attention to whatever the teacher was saying about metaphors or something. Serafina kept glancing at me, though. She knew something was wrong. After the final bell rang, I went to the bathroom and waited. I stayed in there for 20 minutes while most of the students and teachers left. When I came out, the hallways were almost empty. Just a few kids at their lockers and some teachers walking to the parking lot. I walked slowly toward the administrative area. Took a long route so it wouldn't look suspicious. Tom was already waiting near the side entrance. He was standing there with his cane like he was lost or confused. When he heard me coming, he moved toward the door. I looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then I grabbed the door handle and pulled. It opened easy. The lock was definitely broken. We slipped inside fast, and I closed the door behind us. The office was dark and quiet. Tom headed straight for Hutchinson's desk, while I stood near the door to watch. My job was to warn him if anyone came. Tom went through Hutchinson's desk drawers fast. He moved with his hands steady now that he was actually doing something instead of just hiding and being scared. He opened the bottom drawer and pushed some supply catalogs to the side. Then he pulled out a folder. It was tucked way in the back like she was trying to hide it. Tom opened the folder, and his face went white. He spread the papers out on the desk. They were photocopied pages from student files. I could see names and addresses, parent work schedules, after-school activities, bus routes, everything you would need to know about a kid's routine. Tom counted them quietly. 15 students, all of them 5th graders. Every single page had a small star drawn next to the kid's name in red pen. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. My heart was beating, so hard I was sure someone would hear it. I took pictures of every page in the folder, made sure the names and addresses were clear, made sure you could see the red stars. Tom kept searching while I photographed everything. He opened the back of the bottom drawer and felt around. Then he pulled out a phone. It was one of those cheap burner phones you can buy at gas stations. Tom turned it on, and the screen lit up. There were text messages. He scrolled through them, and I leaned over to see. The messages were with a number that wasn't saved. They were short and used weird code words, but you could tell what they meant. Target 3 leaves at 3:15 Tuesdays. Mother works late Thursdays. Walks home alone on Maple Street. I took photos of every message, every single one. This was the proof we needed. Hutchinson wasn't just passing along information. She was actively helping someone target and track 5th grade kids. Tom kept scrolling and I kept taking photos. Every message was another piece of proof. One said the target walks alone on Tuesdays. Another said the mom works until 6. They were mapping out these kids' entire lives. My hands shook a little, but I made sure every photo was clear. Tom found messages going back 2 months. This wasn't new. Hutchinson had been doing this for a while. I took photos of the phone itself, too, showing the number it belonged to and the date stamps on everything. We needed to document every single detail. Tom was about to turn the phone off when we both heard footsteps in the hallway outside, not far away, maybe 20 feet from the door. We froze. I stopped breathing. Tom's finger was still on the power button, but he didn't press it. The footsteps got closer. My heart was beating, so hard I thought whoever it was would hear it through the door. Tom slowly pushed the power button, and the screen went dark. He put the phone back in the drawer exactly where he found it. I backed away from the desk as quiet as possible. The footsteps were right outside now. I could see Tom's jaw clenched tight. His hands were in fists. We both stared at the door, waiting for it to open. The footsteps stopped. Someone was standing right there. I counted in my head. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Then the footsteps started again and moved past the door. They got quieter and quieter until I couldn't hear them anymore. Tom let out a breath. I realized I'd been holding mine too. He quickly closed the drawer and made sure everything looked exactly like we found it. I checked the desk to make sure we didn't leave anything. No papers out of place, no drawers open. We moved toward the door and I listened hard before opening it. The hallway was empty. We slipped out fast and I pulled the door closed behind us. We walked separate directions once we got outside. Tom headed toward his usual bus stop on the other side of the parking lot. I went the opposite way toward home. My legs felt weird and shaky. like they might give out. I kept looking behind me, expecting someone to yell or come running after us, but nobody did. The parking lot was almost empty, just a few cars left. I made it to the sidewalk and turned the corner. As soon as I was out of sight from the school, I stopped and leaned against a building. I bent over with my hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. We'd just broken into the office. Stolen evidence. Almost got caught. My whole body was shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos. They were all there, clear and readable. Proof that Hutchinson was helping criminals target kids. That evening, I locked my bedroom door and went through every single photo we took. I organized them on my phone into different folders. One folder for the student files Hutchinson had copied, one for the burner phone messages, one for photos of the phone itself. The student files were the worst. 15 kids total, all fifth graders. Each page had a name, address, parent work schedule, and after-school activities. Someone had drawn a small red star next to each name. I looked at the addresses and recognized some of the streets. These were kids who lived close to the school, kids who probably walked home. The work schedules showed which parents got home late, which kids would be alone after school. It was a list of easy targets. Kids who wouldn't have adults around to protect them. Kids who walked the same route every day. Kids whose routines were easy to learn. The burner phone messages made it even clearer. They were coordinating when to watch these kids, which days they'd be alone, which routes they took. One message said target 3 leaves at 3:15 on Tuesdays and walks down Maple Street. Another said target 7's mom works late Thursdays. They weren't even using names, just numbers. Like these kids were objects to track and study. I felt sick reading it, but I kept organizing everything. We needed this evidence to be clear and easy to understand. Someone in law enforcement needed to see exactly what Hutchinson was doing. My phone buzzed around 11 at night. It was Tom. His message said we need to talk about who to trust with this. I texted back asking what he meant. He said we can't go to anyone at the school because we don't know who else might be involved with Hutchinson. I hadn't thought about that, but he was right. What if other teachers or staff were helping too? What if we showed the evidence to the wrong person and they warned the criminals? Tom's next message said we can't tell my parents either. They'll panic and want to move again. If we run, the criminals might hurt Donna. I understood. His parents had been running for 5 years, and it never stopped the criminals from finding them. Running again wouldn't help. We needed to actually stop these people. I asked who we could tell then. Tom said someone in law enforcement, but not local police. Someone who won't expose my secret. Someone who will act fast. I stared at my phone thinking. We needed an adult who would take us seriously, who would believe 2 high school kids about a criminal conspiracy, who would protect Tom's identity and his sister's safety. I told Tom I'd research and find someone. He sent back a thumbs up and said, be careful. I spent the next 3 hours on my laptop searching. I looked up detectives in our county. I read about different cases. I searched for people who worked with crimes against children. Most of the results were just basic department websites. Nothing helpful. Then I found an article about a detective named Sarah Franco. She'd worked on a big case 2 years ago involving a man who was targeting elementary school kids. The article said she was known for being careful and protecting witnesses. Another article mentioned she'd helped put away a group of predators who were working together. That's what we needed. Someone who understood this kind of crime. Someone who knew how to handle witnesses who were in danger. I read everything I could find about her. She'd been a detective for 15 years. She specialized in crimes against children. Reviews from other cases said she was tough but fair, that she actually listened to victims, that she didn't give up on cases even when they got hard. By 2 in the morning, I was sure she was the right person to contact. The next morning, I got to the school early and found Tom in the library. I showed him my phone with all the articles about Detective Franco. He read through them carefully. His hands were shaking a little. I could tell he was scared about bringing in law enforcement. He asked, what if she doesn't believe us? What if she tells my parents? What if she exposes that I can see? I said we keep our identities secret at first. We call from a payphone and don't give our names. We tell her we have evidence and see if she'll help before we reveal who we are. Tom thought about it. He looked at the articles again. Then he nodded and said, okay, we're in over our heads anyway. This is too big for us to handle alone. We decided to call her after school. Find a payphone somewhere away from the school. Keep it short and simple. Just explain we have evidence of someone at our school helping criminals target young kids. See if she takes us seriously. If she does, then we can decide whether to trust her with more information. Tom put his dark glasses back on and picked up his cane. First period was about to start. During lunch, the gray jacket man showed up again, but this time he walked right through the cafeteria like he belonged there. He was wearing a visitor badge clipped to his jacket. He was carrying a clipboard. He looked like he was doing some kind of inspection or checking something official. Nobody questioned him. He walked slowly past the tables. His eyes were scanning all the students. When he walked past our table, I kept my head down, but watched him from the corner of my eye. Tom's jaw clenched. I could see the muscle twitching. but he kept eating his food and staring straight ahead like he couldn't see anything. The man walked so close I could have reached out and touched him. His neck tattoo was visible above his collar. It was dark ink, some kind of snake or dragon design that wrapped around the side. The same tattoo Tom had described from the home invasion 5 years ago. The man kept walking through the cafeteria and then went out the far door toward the main office. As soon as he was gone, Tom let out a breath. I pulled out my phone under the table and added a note to my documentation. Gray jacket man in cafeteria during 5th period lunch. Visitor badge, clipboard, acting like official business. Neck tattoo visible. After he left, I waited a minute, then got up and followed him. I stayed far enough back that it wouldn't look obvious. I watched him stop near the main office and talk to Hutchinson. She was standing by the copy machine. When she saw him, she looked around quickly, then walked over. She pulled something from her pocket. It looked like a key. She handed it to him. They talked for maybe 30 seconds. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was tense, like they were discussing something serious but trying to look casual. Then the man nodded and walked toward the 5th grade wing. Hutchinson went back to the copy machine like nothing happened. I ducked around a corner and pulled out my phone. I took photos of both of them, made sure I got their faces clear, got the key in Hutchinson's hand, got them standing close together, got the man walking toward the 5th grade area. I took at least 10 photos from different angles. This was proof they were working together. Proof the man had access to the school areas. Proof Hutchinson was giving him keys to get in places. I texted Tom as soon as I got back to the cafeteria. I said I saw Hutchinson give the gray jacket man a key. They talked near the office. Then he went to the 5th grade wing. I have photos. Tom texted back immediately. He said the man probably needs access to watch the kids closer or plant cameras. He said this means they're getting ready to actually do something, not just planning anymore, actually moving forward. I felt my stomach drop. Tom was right. The threats against his sister were getting worse. The man was showing up at the school more often. Now he had a key to get into areas whenever he wanted. Whatever they were planning was about to happen soon. Tom's next message said we need to call Detective Franco today. Not tomorrow. Today. I agreed. We couldn't wait anymore. These criminals were escalating. We had the evidence. We needed to act now before something bad happened to one of those 5th graders. After school, Tom and I met at the side entrance and started walking. We didn't talk, just walked fast. We went 6 blocks to a gas station that still had a payphone outside. I'd seen it last week and remembered it. Most places don't have payphones anymore, but this old station still had one by the air pump. Tom stood next to me while I picked up the phone. It smelled like metal and old cigarette smoke. I pulled out the paper where I'd written Detective Franco's number. My hands were shaking a little as I dialed. The phone rang 3 times. Then a woman answered. She said, "This is Detective Franco." I took a breath and tried to make my voice sound steady and older. I said I have evidence that someone at my school is helping criminals target young children. There was a pause. Then she asked who I was. I said I can't give my name yet, but I have photos and documentation. She asked what kind of evidence. I said copied student files with addresses and schedules, text messages coordinating watching kids, photos of a suspicious man with a neck tattoo getting keys from a school employee. My voice was shaking now, even though I was trying to sound calm. Detective Franco's voice changed, got more serious. She asked careful questions. What school? What grade level? How did I get this evidence? I answered everything without giving away who Tom and I were. She listened. She didn't dismiss me or act like I was making things up. She asked if I felt I was in immediate danger. I said no, but the kids being targeted might be. She was quiet for a second. Then she said she wanted to meet me, show her the evidence in person. She said this sounded serious, and she needed to see what I had. I looked at Tom. He nodded. I said, okay. When and where? She said there's a coffee shop 2 blocks from the police station. She could meet us there in 2 hours. Us, she said. I realized I'd said we instead of I at some point. I said yes, me and one other person. She said that's fine. Just come to the coffee shop and we'll talk. I said okay, and hung up. Tom and I looked at each other. We'd just set everything in motion. There was no going back now. Tom started walking first. His hands were in his pockets, and his shoulders were tight. I caught up with him, and we headed toward the main street where the coffee shop was. Neither of us talked for the first few blocks. I kept thinking about what we were about to do. We were going to show a real detective all the evidence we'd gathered by breaking into the school office. We were going to tell her about criminals targeting little kids, and we had to do it without giving away Tom's secret. My stomach felt weird, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Tom suddenly stopped walking and turned to face me. His dark glasses hid his eyes, but I could see his jaw was tight. He said if anything happens to him or his family, I have to promise to tell people the truth. I asked what he meant. He said, if the criminals come after them, if they disappear or something worse, I need to make sure everyone knows why he pretended to be blind. He said people need to know he was trying to protect other kids, not hurt them. The way he said it made my chest feel heavy. I promised him. He nodded. and we kept walking. The coffee shop was 2 blocks from the police station, like Detective Franco said. When we got there, I could see her through the window. She was already sitting in a back corner booth away from other people. We went inside, and the smell of coffee hit me. Franco looked up when we walked over. She was probably in her 40s with short dark hair and these sharp eyes that looked at both of us really carefully. I could tell she was trying to figure out if we were real or just some paranoid kids making stuff up. Tom and I sat down across from her. The booth seats were old and cracked. Franco said thanks for coming and asked if we wanted anything to drink. We both said no. I pulled out my phone with all the photos we'd taken. My hands were still shaking a little as I unlocked it and pulled up the first picture of Mrs. Hutchinson's folder. I slid the phone across the table to Franco. She picked it up and started scrolling through the photos. Her face was calm at first, but then her expression changed. Her eyebrows pulled together and her mouth got tight. She scrolled through all the pictures of the student files with the names and addresses, then the photos of the text messages on the burner phone, then the pictures of the gray jacket man with his neck tattoo. She looked up at us and asked how we got this evidence. I took a breath and said we broke into the school office after hours. Franco's eyes got harder. She asked why we would do that instead of going to the school administration or our parents. I explained that we think someone inside the school is helping the criminals. We were scared that if we told the wrong person, they'd warn the bad guys and everything would disappear. Franco was quiet for a second. Then she asked if we could meet somewhere private to show her everything. I realized we were already in the private meeting. She meant she wanted all the evidence, not just to look at my phone. She asked why we were so invested in this, what our connection was to the situation. Tom took a deep breath next to me. He told Franco that he transferred from another school where a kid went missing after similar weird activity. He said he'd been watching for the same patterns here. He didn't mention anything about being able to see or his family's situation with the criminals, just that he'd been paying attention and noticed things that worried him. Franco stared at Tom's face while he talked. I could tell she knew there was more to the story, but she didn't push him. She just nodded slowly. Franco said the evidence we'd given her was enough to open an investigation, but she needed to check it out herself before taking action. She asked us to send her all the photos and documents we'd collected. She promised to look into Mrs. Hutchinson and the gray jacket man quietly. She warned us to be really careful and not do anything else that could put us in danger or mess up a possible case. I said okay and asked for her email to send the photos. She gave me her work email address, and I started sending everything right there. Tom and I were about to get up and leave when Franco stopped us. She said she'd worked cases like this before where kids disappeared because adults didn't take warning signs seriously enough. She promised she wouldn't let that happen here. Then she pulled out her card and wrote her personal cell phone number on the back. She said to call her right away if we saw anything that meant someone was in immediate danger. The way she looked at us when she said it made me actually believe she cared about protecting those 5th graders at our school. Tom and I left the coffee shop and started walking back toward our neighborhood. We didn't talk. We just walked in silence. I kept thinking about what we'd just done. We'd brought law enforcement into this whole situation. That meant things were going to start happening that we couldn't control anymore. I looked over at Tom and could see how scared he was, even though he was trying to hide it. He was terrified the investigation would somehow show people he could see or make the criminals go after his sister. But we both knew we couldn't keep handling this by ourselves. We weren't equipped to stop actual criminals who'd already made a kid disappear. That night I couldn't stop checking my phone. I kept expecting either a text from Tom or a call from Detective Franco. I tried to do homework but couldn't focus. I kept reading the same paragraph over and over. Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a message from Tom. I opened it and felt my whole body go cold. He said his mom got another threatening photo. This time it was Donna at her school with a red circle drawn around her in marker. The message with the photo said, "Last warning." Tom said his parents were finally ready to listen to him about staying and fighting instead of running away again. But they were also more scared than they'd ever been. I didn't know what to text back. I just said to stay safe and that Franco would help us, but I wasn't sure if that was true. The next morning, my phone rang before I even left for school. It was Detective Franco. She said her first investigation confirmed that Mrs. Hutchinson had been looking at student files she had no reason to view. The school's IT department found a pattern of her searching through things without permission. It had been going on for 3 months. All the searches were focused on 5th grade students and their family information. Franco said they were moving forward with watching Mrs. Hutchinson closely and trying to figure out who the man with the neck tattoo was. She asked if we'd seen him around school recently. I said yes, yesterday during lunch period. She told me to text her immediately if I saw him again. Then she said to be careful at the school today and hung up. The next day at the school, I walked through the front doors trying to act normal, even though my stomach was doing flips. Everything looked the same as always. Kids crowded the hallways talking and laughing. Lockers slammed shut. Teachers stood outside their classrooms greeting students. But I knew something huge was happening underneath all this normalcy. I passed by the main office on my way to first period and saw Hutchinson sitting at her desk like every other day. She was typing on her computer and drinking coffee from her usual mug. She had no idea that detectives were watching everything she did on that computer. She had no idea her whole life was about to explode. I wanted to stare but forced myself to keep walking. During second period, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. It just said he saw the dark blue sedan parked on Elm Street near the 5th grade entrance during passing period. The gray jacket man was still watching, still planning whatever he was planning. My hands started sweating as I read the message. We had given Franco all our evidence, but these criminals were still out there, still targeting kids at our school. I texted back asking if Tom was okay, and he sent a thumbs up, but I could feel how scared he was even through that simple emoji. Lunch period was torture. I sat with my usual friends and tried to eat my sandwich, but everything tasted like cardboard. I kept glancing at Tom's table across the cafeteria. He was sitting alone like always, his dark glasses on, his guide dog lying at his feet. To everyone else, he looked like the quiet, blind kid who kept to himself, but I knew he was scanning every face in that cafeteria, watching for threats, protecting kids who had no idea they needed protecting. Serafina asked me 3 times if I was okay, because I kept zoning out. I made up some excuse about not sleeping well. She gave me a weird look, but dropped it. The afternoon dragged by so slowly I thought I would lose my mind. Every time I checked the clock, only 5 minutes had passed. I couldn't focus on anything the teachers were saying. My notebook pages stayed blank. During last period, I was staring out the window, trying to will the final bell to ring, when the intercom crackled to life. The secretary's voice came through asking me to report to the main office immediately. My heart stopped. Actually stopped for a second before it started racing so fast I thought it would burst out of my chest. Kids around me made those annoying ooh sounds like I was in trouble. I grabbed my backpack with shaking hands and walked out of the classroom. The hallway felt 10 miles long. My legs were moving, but I couldn't feel them. What if something had happened to Tom? What if the criminals had done something to his sister? What if Franco was calling me in to say we were too late? I pushed open the office door and froze. Detective Franco was standing there in a dark suit talking to Principal Hayes. A uniformed police officer stood near the door with his arms crossed. Principal Hayes looked furious. His face was red and his jaw was clenched tight. Franco saw me, and her expression stayed calm and professional. She asked if I could come with her to a conference room. I nodded because I couldn't get words out. We walked down the hallway past Hutchinson's empty desk. I noticed her computer was gone. Her desk drawers were open. There were papers scattered everywhere like someone had searched through everything in a hurry. Franco opened the door to a small conference room, and Tom was already sitting there. His dark glasses were off and sitting on the table in front of him. His real eyes met mine, and I saw how terrified he looked. Franco closed the door and sat down across from us. She folded her hands on the table and took a deep breath. Then she told us they had arrested Hutchinson that morning. My brain couldn't process it at first. We had just seen her at her desk this morning. How could she be arrested already? Franco explained that once they started monitoring Hutchinson's computer activity, they found enough evidence within hours to get a warrant. Hutchinson had been accessing student files she had no reason to look at. She had been copying information and sending it to an outside email address. When police showed up at her house at 6 this morning with the warrant, she broke down immediately and confessed everything. She said a man named John Reeves had been paying her $500 a week to provide student information. She claimed she thought it was for some kind of marketing research about school supplies or after-school programs. She said she had no idea the information was used to target children. Franco's voice was flat when she said the police didn't believe that story for a second. No legitimate marketing research would pay that much money under the table. No legitimate company would need home addresses and parent work schedules. Hutchinson knew exactly what she was doing. She was helping criminals identify vulnerable kids. Franco pulled out her phone and showed us a photo of the gray jacket man. It was a police booking photo. His name was John Reeves, and he had a record. Franco said he had been arrested 8 years ago for attempted kidnapping in another state. He served 3 years and got out on parole. After that, he disappeared from his parole officer's radar and they lost track of him. Until now. The neck tattoo Tom had spotted was associated with a specific criminal organization that operated in multiple states. This group had been linked to at least 6 child disappearances over the past 10 years. Law enforcement had been trying to build a case against them for years, but could never get enough evidence. Until we handed Franco everything we had collected. Our photos and documentation had given them the breakthrough they needed. Franco looked directly at Tom and said his family was not safe yet. Reeves wasn't working alone. They had identified at least 3 other members of the organization, but hadn't caught all of them. She was arranging police protection for Tom's family immediately. Officers would be stationed outside their house. Plainclothes detectives would be watching Donna's elementary school. Our school was getting increased security too. Then Franco did something that surprised me. She leaned forward and spoke directly to Tom in this gentle voice. She said she had been a detective for 15 years, and she had worked cases involving witness intimidation before. She said she knew there was more to his story than what he had told her at the coffee shop. She said if there was anything else he wanted to tell her about why he had been so watchful and so careful, now was the time. She promised anything he said would be kept confidential and used only to protect him and his family. Tom looked at me. His brown eyes were filling with tears. I gave him a small nod. He had been carrying this secret alone for 5 years. He had been living in fear every single day. Maybe it was finally time to trust someone who could actually help. Tom reached up with shaking hands and pulled his dark glasses completely off the table. He set them aside. Then he started talking. He told Franco everything. The home invasion when he was 11. The 3 men who broke in. His dad trying to keep everyone safe by letting them take whatever they wanted. The moment when one of the men grabbed his mom and pulled a knife. What the man said about her being too beautiful to resist. His dad losing control and killing the man to protect her. Tom seeing everything. The man's face, his jacket, the tattoo on his neck, everything. He told her about the 2 surviving criminals coming back to their house a week later. The threats they made against his little sister Donna. How they said they would kill her in front of him and make him watch with his working eyes if he ever testified about what he saw. He told her about his parents making the impossible decision to fake his blindness, about moving and changing their names, about living this lie for 5 years straight, about the missing boy from his previous school who disappeared right after rumors about Tom started spreading, about finding his sister's photo on his doorstep when they moved here. Tom's voice broke multiple times while he talked. Tears ran down his face, but he kept going. He told Franco everything he had been holding inside for 5 years. When he finally finished, the conference room was completely silent. Franco sat very still for a long moment. Then she said 3 words that made Tom start crying harder. She said, "I believe you." She said she had read about his father's case years ago when she was studying witness intimidation tactics. She remembered thinking something felt wrong about how quickly the case fell apart. She said she was going to help protect his family the right way this time. She was going to make sure the people who threatened them went to prison. Franco pulled out her phone right there in the conference room and made a call. She said she was contacting the FBI because Tom's case involved witness intimidation across state lines, interstate criminal activity, and connections to an unsolved child disappearance. This was bigger than local police could handle. She talked on the phone for 10 minutes using words like federal jurisdiction and protective custody. When she hung up, she told us federal agents would arrive within 2 hours to interview Tom and his parents. The family would be placed in protective custody immediately while the investigation expanded. Donna would be picked up from her elementary school by federal agents and brought to a safe location. Tom asked what protective custody meant, and Franco explained it meant his whole family would be moved to a secure location where the criminals couldn't reach them. They would have armed guards. No one would know where they were. They would stay there until every member of the organization was arrested and charged. It could take weeks or even months, but they would be safe. Over the next week, I barely saw Tom. He and his family were hidden away somewhere under FBI protection. I got a few brief texts from him saying they were okay, but he couldn't tell me where they were or what was happening. School felt weird without him there. The rumors about him had finally died down after Franco and the principal made an announcement that Tom had been helping with a police investigation, and all previous gossip about him was completely false. Some kids felt bad for believing the rumors. Others just moved on to talking about something else. I kept checking my phone obsessively, waiting for updates. Finally, Franco called me on Saturday morning. She said the investigation had moved incredibly fast once they started using Hutchinson's cooperation and all the evidence we had gathered. Hutchinson had given them names, email addresses, phone numbers, and meeting locations for the whole organization. The FBI had been able to identify 6 members of the criminal group operating in our state alone. They discovered the organization had been systematically targeting vulnerable children in multiple states for years. They used inside contacts at schools like Hutchinson to identify potential victims. Kids whose parents worked long hours, kids who walked home alone, kids who wouldn't be missed right away. Our school had been their next planned target. Every single 5th grader whose information was in Hutchinson's folder had been evaluated as a possible victim. Franco said if Tom and I hadn't started investigating when we did, if we hadn't gathered that evidence and brought it to her, at least one child from our school would have disappeared within the next month. She said we saved lives. I threw up in my bathroom after that phone call. The next update came 3 days later. Johnry Reeves had been arrested trying to cross the state border. Police had been watching him since Hutchinson's arrest and followed him when he tried to run. When they searched his car, they found surveillance equipment, cameras, and detailed files on 12 different 5th graders from our school. They found his laptop, which had communications with 4 other members of the organization, discussing which kids to target first. They found maps of our school with the 5th grade exits marked. They found photos of Donna's elementary school with her regular walking route highlighted. The FBI used everything they found in Reeves's car to raid multiple locations across 3 states. They arrested 7 people total in coordinated raids that happened at exactly the same time. 2 of the people arrested were the men who had survived the home invasion at Tom's house 5 years ago, the same men who had threatened to kill Donna, the same men who had made Tom live in fear for 5 years. Tom's testimony was finally going to be used. He would testify about the home invasion, about his father's self-defense, about the threats against his family, about everything he had witnessed. The case against Tom's father from 5 years ago was officially reopened. But this time, it was reopened to clear him, not to prosecute him. Once federal investigators reviewed all the evidence about the home invasion and the subsequent threats against Tom, the original prosecutor admitted the case should never have been pursued. The killing had clearly been self-defense. The only reason the case went forward at all was because Tom's testimony became unavailable when he went blind. But now everyone knew the truth about why that happened. The prosecutor who had originally filed charges against Tom's father held a press conference and issued a public apology. He said his office had failed the family by not recognizing the witness intimidation. Tom's father was completely cleared of any wrongdoing. The family could finally stop running. They could stop hiding. Tom could stop pretending to be blind after 5 years of living that lie every single day. 2 months later, Tom walked through the front doors without his dark glasses for the first time, and I watched half the hallway stop and stare at his brown eyes. The principal called an assembly during second period and explained that Tom had been working with law enforcement on a serious case involving threats against his family. She said the rumors about him were completely false and that he had actually been helping protect younger students while putting himself at risk. Some kids came up to Tom afterward and apologized for believing the gossip, their faces red with embarrassment. Others just stood there looking amazed, trying to process that the blind transfer student had been living this whole secret life. Serafina found Tom at lunch and told him she always thought there was something mysterious about him, but never imagined anything like this. Tom and I started hanging out for real after that, not just secret meetings in empty hallways. He joined the basketball team and said it felt incredible to play again after 5 years of pretending he couldn't see the court. He signed up for art class too and showed me these drawings he'd been doing in secret at home, stuff he could never risk showing anyone before. His little sister Donna started seeing a therapist twice a week to help her deal with the fear she'd been carrying around. Tom said his parents were slowly beginning to relax, that his mom could actually sleep through the night now without waking up in panic. One day after school, Tom told me the 5 years of pretending were the worst thing he'd ever gone through, but he was grateful he helped stop those criminals before they hurt more kids. Then he looked right at me and said he was especially grateful that I believed him when he finally told someone the truth, that having one person know his secret and help him made all the difference between giving up and fighting back. That's where we'll stop today. I'm so glad you stayed to the end, because it really means a lot. I hope this story brought a little light into your day. Subscribe and come back soon so we can share more moments like this.